Bill Self leaving Kansas. This was a more prevalent storyline after the Jayhawks were roughed up against Utah and roughed up against BYU. Bill Self comes to the podium and says, I really thought this would be a fun getaway for our team. We'd go to the mountains and find serenity. We actually all hate each other and need to please get away from one another. They win on Saturday. It all kind of comes out in the midweek that Self was in conversations for the Oklahoma State job. This is Brett McMurphy saying that Bill Self spoke to them, answered questions about the job, offered opinion, and is now a member at Karsten Creek. He said one of the country's top golf courses. Okay. He's an out of area member of their golf country club thing. And this all, to me, the woes of Kansas last year, the woes they've faced this year, kind of points toward Bill Self. If he's going to make that Oklahoma State move, making that move, if he's going to retire, this seems like either you stay there for 10 years, you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become a villain. He might be getting in that villain territory.
Yeah, it's obviously weird and far-fetched to be like, oh, yeah, Bill Self will leave Kansas to go to Oklahoma State. But then again, it's like, well, if any time, last year was a weird season for Kansas, and he basically says at the end of it, like, I checked out 3 weeks ago after they got blown out of the tournament by a kind of mid Gonzaga team, and it was like, what was that? What did he say there? Like, you're not really supposed to say that. That's very odd. And honestly, the way we're looking at it now, I know they won on Saturday, but would you be shocked if he tells you at the end of the season this year, hey, I checked out 3-4 weeks ago? Wouldn't shock me the way they're playing. And this is back-to-back years where they've had massive preseason expectations. This year they were preseason number one. It kind of falls apart in the way that Kansas falls apart. You know, Indiana falls apart. They don't make the tournament. Kansas becomes a 4 seed. But the thing that I found interesting throughout all this is people being like, oh, yeah, I mean, what? This happens. They asked him for advice. He helped him. And I was like, does this happen?
Yeah,
like I could see Carolina going to Roy Williams or Duke going to Mike Krzyzewski. Those guys don't coach anymore. Like, do you think this just happens all the time? I don't know. Do you think if Scott Drew left Baylor right now that Mack Rhodes would be calling up Jerome Tang to ask for advice or to hire him? Like, that's what we're talking about here. I don't think that's just common practice that, you know, every time Oklahoma State comes open that Bill Self's like, yeah, here's who I'd look at and here's why. It's odd when they're in your own conference specifically. It's very odd. And it did take a while for Oklahoma State to make this hire. I remember thinking that they were going to go get John Jacobs, who ends up going to FAU, the former Baylor assistant. And I was like, Oklahoma State still hasn't made a hire here. And so this is odd. There's something fishy about this one. Why would you leave Kansas at the end of the day? Except the villain thing.
The question of, does it matter that he played there in 1985? You know, like, does it matter today, 40 years later, that you're an alum? And again,
which comes up a lot in all of college sports.
Right. We all think, oh, well, Scott Drew grew up close to Indiana, must be going to Indiana. And you saw with Mark Pope takes a job that many people thought he'd bitten off more than he could chew by going to Kentucky to go back to what he effectively called home. And for Self, like, yeah, of course, you're rooting, I guess, for your alma mater. But again, you're competing against them twice a year, beating the crap out of them for decades on end now as the head coach at Kansas. Is it worth, especially as a more senior coach, to take on a role like that at Oklahoma State? Again, this could be like a John Calipari leaving Kentucky to go to Arkansas, and they're probably going to miss the tournament this year. You know, is it worth tarnish? Because I think if you're Bill Self and you leave Kansas, it's a Kim Mulkey Baylor deal. It rivals that.
Go one of two ways, yeah.
Because now, once you leave, you're not the statue coach. You're not the welcome back, we love you. It's, oh, I never really liked Bill Self. The national championships were fun, but he was a scumbag who had FBI investigations going on.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting point. I want to talk about the alum thing, because we all of us who do this and are watching and listening to this, we love our alma maters. We know what that poll would be like for us. But like, putting this into perspective, like, Oklahoma State's barely in this conference. I feel for them. It used to be a great basketball
football
program.
and basketball, by the way. They're the worst.
Sucks.
Their 2024-25 is the worst athletic year that any school has had in the Big 12.
They are wrestlers, okay? Like, that's what they are at this point. Like, Rick Pitino having this great season at St. John's. Is anyone thinking, oh, that's where UMass's first call should be? He played there. Of course he'll come and rescue UMass, or Providence is not calling up Billy Donovan. And that's not that far off from what we're talking about here. Oklahoma State is that much of a project, even at the Power 4 level. So I don't think it does matter, because A, he's already coached there. He took them to a Final Four. And B, it is Kansas we're talking about. These guys, if they leave, they're leaving for the NBA. They're not leaving for their alma. I'll just get one for the old alma mater, a guy in his mid-50s or whatever it is, 60. I don't know how old he is. Not just leaving for the grandeur of his alma mater and to hear the same old songs and go to the same old barbecue places. I doubt it. And we hear it all the time. We hear it in football as well as basketball, that, this is his place. This is where he would go. It's like, that ship has sailed, man. He left for a bigger job 20 years ago. I do think it's weird, though, this kind of process and what's coming out here from this McMurphy report, that how often has that happened? They've had 3 or 4 coaches since he was there. Does he get the call every time? Does it take a new athletic director? Did it take 10 years of him being away? I don't know. It's just you think Texas Tech the next time, you think when Texas Tech was looking at Grant McCaslin, they called up Chris Beard?
Yeah.
He's like, hey, what do you think, Chris? What do you think about this guy?
Could you advise us?
I know it didn't end well here, but
I like to picture
Mac Rhodes calling up Dave Bliss. Like, hey, we need some new assistants on this team. I just doubt it. I
like to think Mike Gundy has 4 or 5 beers, gets behind the wheel, gets in his car, calls up Bill Self. And it's like,
Mike Gundy has a couple beers, gets behind the wheel, drives to a payphone, to call Bill Self.
Just to say, hey, just thinking of you. Just anytime you want to come to Oklahoma State, they'll take them with open arms. Coming up, football tournaments. That's right, college football tournaments to end the conference season. That's what the SEC wants to do. I think we're going to have to do it too. This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hey, today's show brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is where I go to make money. I bought a house this week. A mortgage is a lot. How do I offset that? The NBA and college basketball live betting. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. Even if you miss the opening tip-off or want a fourth quarter comeback, you can place those bets and combine them into a same-game parlay. I love the live betting feature because it makes every moment exciting. I didn't miss my chance. I get to actually put money into a game even though I missed it beforehand. FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet just hits. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.